Hi there. In the last lecture, we looked at how to pull posts into our view using Django's model import and using the query, as well as passing it in as a variable, and then using a for loop within our template to iterate through the results that were returned. In this lecture, I want to go over how to create a single post view and how to link that through uh, on our archive view, which is now kind of our home template, and how to pull in the title, the text, the author, etc. into our single posts view. So the first thing that I want to do is to go back into our URLs file and create a specific URL that is going to match our single templates view. So let's just copy this one for now. And then I'm going to replace some of these variables. So the first thing is here, instead of saying username, I'm just going to say post. So ideally we need to clean this up a little bit. We don't necessarily want this to be a username. We may want to call it posts or post archive or home or nothing at all here. As we did before, just having the blank view, but we're not going to worry about that now. So we're creating a new one called post, and this is going to pull in a single post ID. So let's call this single because we know that it's a single post. So this regular expression group is going to be called single, and likewise we're going to pass single into this new function that we are going to create. And when we actually link the post in our anchor tag, um, the the single group that's going to be pulled in is going to be the ID of that post, because the ID is the best way to distinguish that post in the URL. This is because you may have more than one post with the same title. So another way that might be better for SEO reasons is to create an additional model varchar field called slug, and then possibly pass the slug in, and then just make sure that your slugs are unique for every single post so that no post has the same slug. But for the purposes of this, I'm just going to use the ID, so it's not really going to look great in the URL, but it will get the job done. So if we go back to our URLs file, we now need to call a function which I think would still be good from our blog views perspective. I don't think it's necessary for us to create anything new at that point other than a new function in our views file called single. So what this is going to do is when this particular URL regular expression is matched, it's going to try and find the single function within our blog's views. So let's actually go ahead and create that function. So let's say define, and then our function is single, close brackets, colon, and then just remember to pass the request variable into this. And now the new variable that we can pass in here, as we did with username before, is now single. And now single is going to be mapped to the ID, which is great. So now we have access to that ID. So we might as well finish off this function. So what I'm going to do then is I'm actually going to now try get our single post. So I'm going to create a new variable called single, and then this is going to be equal to something. And then we are going to create our context variable again over here. So let's just copy our context. Well, let's not copy it because it's going to be completely different. Context is equal to this new array. And then we are going to have, let's call it post so that we know that it's a post. And post's value is going to be the value that is passed in for this single over here. So this is really the ID, and then I'm reassigning the ID here to what I would expect to get back as the entire post. Then the final thing that we need to do in here before we query our single post is to return a view. So let's just copy, or return a template. Let's just copy this particular one for now, and we're going to go pages home.html. I don't want it to be home.html. I want it to be single.html. I've already created single.html, so let's delete that and we can recreate it again. And you'll see inside of here we still need to pass the context variable into this. So what do we need to, what query do we call to get our single to now have the instance of a single post with the ID of the single parameter that's being passed into this function via the URL? So the way that we do this is, again, we target the post object. So we will say post, and then we say dot objects again, because now we want to run this on all of the objects, and then we're going to run again another specific function. This function is going to be slightly different because we don't want to return all of the objects. We want to get an object that matches a specific parameter. So I'm going to use the get function, and what I can do in here is I can pass conditions into this get function. So if we go back to our models, we can see we have author, title, text, created date, and the implicit auto-incremented ID. So we can actually say ID in here is equal to something, an integer. So we can easily just pass our single variable here, which will be passed in through into this function, and it's going to be called here in our URL. So for example, if this was let's see, in the context of this regular expression would match post /1, and what this would do is it would pass in 1 as the single variable here, where ID is now equal to this 1. Great. So now we are able to we are able to render a single page if the ID is passed in. So as I had earlier, what I had previously created was the single.html file. So let's just create that again, single.html, and we can save this, single.html. And what I want to do here is, because we're just passing the post variable in here as a single, we can easily just say, as I did earlier, we can easily just say post.title. Now, I think what would be really cool is if we wrap this in h1 tag for the title. And because we have access to everything in this post now, we can easily just say p, and then we can put our post description in here. So sorry, it's not actually description, I think it's called text, so that's coming from here. We can also put our author in here, so let's put the author in here as well. So by, and then we are going to say post dot author. Now the chances are that this is going to return an author object or an author ID. So what I want to do here is just have a look quickly in our back end and go to our users, and it's going to be the username field that we're looking for. So let me just say go into this, say admin for example, and it is the username field. So I'm going to pass author.username, and let's see if that works. Then the next thing that we are going to do is to actually test to see if this works. So we don't really need to create our anchor tag just yet. We are going to create it soon over here, so that it will actually link to the correct place. But we could just as easily pass it into our URL manually. So we can say post equal to 1, and there we go. This is great. We now have our post equal to 1, and we are echoing out our h1 by admin, and then we're echoing out some text. So that is really, really cool. We have a functioning single post system. So the last thing that we really need to do in this file is to fix up our anchor tag over here. So what you might think is we should be able to just say post / post ID and then another /. So this kind of makes sense, that this would work. So if we went to the front end of our site, went back to our page, and now when we click on this, for some reason this does not work. Why is that? Because it is going localhost and then it is using a relative path. So because we are already on the username test path, as you can see here, all it's doing is it's just appending. When we click on this, it's just appending post 1 onto that. Now this is not what we want. We want post 1 to be right at the beginning of our URL, and we want to completely scrap username and test for now. So this is quite difficult to do without having to jump between directories. So what Django does have is a great utility function called URL, and what that allows you to do is to grab the base URL and pass the view into that you want to call. So we can actually just call that straight in our Django templates. So because it is a functional piece of code and not echoing out something, we use our percentage signs. If we were echoing out something straight out, then we would use our double curly braces. And then the utility function is called URL. So we're just calling that utility function, and the view parameter that we're passing in is called single, and then that single links to will automatically find this single URL here, and will automatically find this single function. So that's really, really great. So we echoing out the single, well, sorry, we're getting the single view here, and then we're passing a parameter into that single view, and the parameter that we're passing in, you guessed it, well, did you guess it? I guess that's the question, is post ID. So if we click on this, it's going to find the regular expression that matches this function, and it's going to pass the post ID into that. So if we save this and we refresh our what is effectively our home page, and we click on this, you can now see that we are getting the correct URL. This is great. This is exactly what we want. Well done for getting this far, guys. See you in the next lecture.